Good morning and welcome back to our garden. Now, today is the beginning of February, and if you're like me and you love to garden, spring fever has hit, and you just want to start all the seeds right now. But some seeds, it is time, like onions. We sowed those in our most recent vlog in the basement. And it's also time for some of my slow growing flowers. And we're going to sow those today. But before that, there's a few things we need to do in the garden. But first, let's feed the birds and the squirrels. Now, I missed filming, but I just saw a squirrel collecting leaves for a nest. And that tells me soon they're going to have their babies. I've noticed lately they've been extra hungry. So let's go ahead and help them out. Now we're going to plant out those onions right along here because this side of the garden gets more sun. The opposite side has equal sun in the spring, but once the blackberry leaf's out, it's more shaded over there. And these onions are going to need sun all summer long. So let's go ahead and harvest this kale, kohlrabi, and that little bit of bok choy. So for that, we need to go get the basket. And while we're in here, let's go ahead and check on the community shelf. We had some snow this morning, so let's see how those paper yard waste bags are doing. Oh, they still look okay, and more than half have been taken. Now see the strawberries along here? They are an excellent companion plant for the onions. But these hoops, they're in the wrong place. So we might as well go ahead and collect them and store them in the garage. Look at that. These all survived the sub-freezing temperatures for 2 weeks where it was in the teens and single digits. Now they did have a cover, but they were also survived 1.5 feet of snow. They look good. Now I used the leaves. But that kale, wow, it's starting to grow again. It is a real powerhouse, a survivor. Now while this green soaks, we need to empty out this kale because we need this container. And this is what we harvested in our most recent video, the Napa cabbage. We're going to dehydrate it because my #1 way to use my greens is dehydrated. I grind them up like this. Hang on. So that's the first step, and this is the second step, and this is what the end up is. So I dry them raw, about 120 degrees or less. And then I grind them up in a food processor or crunch them up by hand. And that's what's in this jar. That's that stage. And last, I grind them into a powder in this coffee grinder. And I only use this one for greens. And from there, I fill up capsules. And these are some green supplements. It's a variety, a mixture of greens. And I take 12 every day, 3 at each meal and snack. That's the easiest way for me to eat my greens. And you saw that squirrel that was up there on the fence? It was looking right at me through the kitchen window because it knows I'm the one that puts out the food. And yesterday I forgot to feed them. And while I was resting in the living room, the squirrel tapped on the living room window over there and looked right at me. Okay, let's leave the animals to eat and go down in the basement and start some flower seeds. The lettuce is only 2 days old and has already grown so much. I think it's more than doubled. It really grows fast. So the furnace room is warm, so I take off my long sleeve shirt. And this is the place where I start all of my seeds. It's perfect here. It's warm. I've got wood beams to hang the chains for the lights. I have water and a drain. It's got everything that I need. So today we're going to start balcony mix petunias. They're a dwarf variety. I've used this variety for many years, so my seed's going to be a mixture of my own saved seed and some fresh seed I think I bought last year. And they are tiny. And they do require light to germinate. And we're going to do 3 colors of another flower, Vinca. Now, I've never grown these from seed before. 2 years ago, I bought some plants online through Home Depot, and they did fantastic in my green stock. I loved the results. They're heat and drought tolerant. They got big and bushy with lots of color, and they were the last flower to die from a freeze. So I want to try to grow them myself. And both of these seeds need to be started 12 weeks before the last freeze. Now the petunias, from my experience, they need that time. I think the packet says 8 to 10 weeks, but I found they need more like 12. I want to give them plenty of time to get big and bushy. And I'm going to use a 10 by 10 extra sturdy bootstrap farmer tray, along with the 2-inch soil blocker. And I'm going to cover it with a dome a greenhouse dome. This is an old Jiffy dome. It's from those Jiffy greenhouses you see in the store. They have those little flat pellets and you add water and they expand. Have you seen those before? That's what that's from. And then I have some new ones that I bought a few years ago, and it was really hard to find new ones that were cheap, but I think I have a link for that on Amazon. And I always cover all my seeds with domes. It helps hold in the moisture. Now let me show you the soil I'm going to use. I just opened it, so it's kind of awkward to pick it up. It's my absolute favorite brand, ProMix. And I either use the moisture control, which actually everything right now in the grow room is planted in that, but I'm out of it. And this year I decided to buy the organic. Yeah, it says garden, but it is a potting soil mix. I like that they come compacted. They're rectangular, they have a handle, and they stack well. They're easy to store. I bought them from Home Depot. So I like to put 25 soil blocks in this 10 by 10 tray. And it's a little bit tricky, but it can be done. Let me show you how. Now, the first 4 rows of 4, that's simple. That's easy. Really straightforward. So just take your time, and with experience, you'll learn the trick to it. Now, I like that one dome will fit over 2 10 by 10 trays. Because, the long trays are 10 by 20. But filling one tray up with the same type of seed is often just too many of one kind of plant for me. So first, we've got a tag, and we're going to start the petunias. There's one spot left here in the grow lights, and it's perfect because they're going to require this light to germinate. And look how tiny those seeds are. And most people just sprinkle them over the top of a tray, but I prefer to put them into individual soil blocks. Of course, I will have to thin them later. Now the petunias are going to germinate in about 7 to 15 days. Now, let's look at the Vinca. They're not as tiny. This is a much better size. They're not huge, but it's better. Let me show you. These I can actually count out. I have the tags ready. And I want to plant 50 all together. I did mention where I'm going to plant these. Most of my garden is an in-ground garden. I prefer it that way. It requires much less water. But along the side of our tall, long, narrow rowhouse, the area between our rowhouse and the rowhouse next door, I have 4 green stalks. And I'm going to have these flowers in both green stalks, 16 plants of each. And in the front, I have some porch pots. After we've finished sowing these seeds, I'll show you where. Now, Vinca is small. It's going to be an 8-inch plant and about 8 to 12 inches wide. And I have another garden. It's a memorial garden for my son. And this is what I want to plant there. So I need to make sure I have enough to fill that space. So we're going to try 50. And what I don't use, I can put on the community shelf. Now the petunias, they do require light to germinate. Most seeds don't, but petunias do, and that's the reason I did not put any soil over those little holes, just a little bit of water. But the Vinca requires it to be dark, and that's the reason I covered the seeds with soil. Most of the time, that is what I do. Mostly I do it for moisture, but this time I did it to make those seeds be in the dark. And I'm not going to put it into the grow light yet. It's going to take about 7 to 21 days to germinate. And I read, be careful because they don't like to be moist. And once they germinate, if you leave them in the damp, they're going to rot. So I put them close to this other seed so I can keep my eye on them every day. Okay, let's clean up and then go up and I'll show you where I'm going to plant these flowers. And they're both summer flowers, so they're going to go out 2 weeks after the last freeze, about mid-May, Mother's Day. Now you see the difference between the regular cheap trays, they're weak, and the bootstrap farmer trays, how strong and sturdy they are. I was able to pick that up with one hand. I was able to buy some with some Christmas money. Now 4 green stalks, and in winter I unstack them and I cover them with fleece to protect them, but they'll get stacked back up later. And this is where the flowers are going to be planted out. I like to alternate 1 pocket flowers, 1 pocket greens, 1 pocket flowers, 1 pocket greens. And our greens are strawberries. Now they'll grow year round. And herbs. Each green stalk is going to have its own herb. And creeping Jenny, a vining plant. And those stay in the green stalks. Then we're going to have spring flowers and summer flowers. In spring, we're going to put pansies, which are already there. And later, we're going to put some stalk and some snapdragons. Probably start those the next vlog. Then we'll switch those out in the summer for the petunias, the Vinca, and some marigolds. And we'll get them all stacked up. Now, I like to plant on a diagonal. I don't plant all the same for each tier. I like that cascading effect. You'll see what I'm talking about in the spring. Now these are the porch pots, and right now they're looking kind of sad in winter. But come spring, these pansies are just gonna explode. And hopefully the sweet alyssum that we sowed in here recently, it's gonna cascade over and bush out. And later we're gonna add snapdragons and some stalk. Summer, we'll switch those for petunias, and those really cascade over beautifully, and hopefully some of the Vinca. This is the window that squirrel was tapping on. My chair's right over there, and it was looking right at me. That's interesting. I wonder if it'll ever do that again. Are you excited about starting seeds? Let me know what you're doing. It's a great time of year. I love it. Every year I feel like it's just a miracle. I've been growing my own seeds for probably about 14 or 15 years, but I'm still amazed every time that little bitty tiny thing sprouts and becomes a plant that makes food or beautiful flowers. Thank you for visiting our garden and helping me start flower seeds. See you later. Bye-bye.